Well, I have the distinct pleasure of being able to introduce our speaker for today. I think you're in for a real treat. We had a chance to talk with Alec over lunch. He's very involved and has been the executive director, excuse me, of the Clean Air Council. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Clean Air Council, which he's going to talk about, I'm sure, in more detail. But it's Philly's oldest environmental nonprofit. Even preceded EPA. It was before the first Earth Day and before the modern Clean Air Act of 1967. So yes, wow, indeed. Um, so Alex's extensive experience has been in environmental advocacy. He started out in high school. I do have this right, don't I? Yeah. Started out at Chatham High School and has continued his work in environmental related advocacy for all those years since. He has a degree in mathematics, an interesting combination here, a degree in mathematics from Cornell and then a law degree from Columbia. Before coming to the Clean Air Council, was involved in litigation and then became involved in litigation for the Clean Air Council and then became the executive director. And to quote one of his contemporaries, from his courtroom victories to tireless partnering with residents facing environmental issues to shaping successful campaigns to combat major polluting facilities, I've had the honor of being in a front row seat as Alec has proven time and again how valuable he is to the environmental movement. Please recognize Alec and welcome him. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maris Grove, for having me. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I'm very excited to be here with everybody today. So I'm Alex Baumstein, live in Philadelphia, run Clean Air Council. The council started in 1967 as the Delaware Valley Citizens Council for Clean Air. We were actually started by lung associations, regional lung associations, before it became the National American Lung Association. And I'll go through a little bit of the history of the council, but I want to focus today on the substance of how our air is doing, what issues are affecting Delaware County, and things that people can do. So I want to go through that arc, and I want to also make sure that as you have any questions that are on your mind, please don't hesitate to jump in with them. But I'll also save some time for questions at the end so I can make sure to get to anybody who has anything on their mind here. Working on getting the clicker, just a second. Okay, here we go. Yes, so Clean Air Council's mission is to protect everyone's right to a healthy environment. Now in Pennsylvania, we are lucky because our Constitution actually protects everybody's right to a healthy environment. Article 1, Section 27 of our Constitution guarantees Pennsylvanians the right to breathe clean air and drink pure water, and also protects other natural and aesthetic aspects of our environment. So these are truly rights. This is our right to a healthy environment here in Pennsylvania. And as I mentioned, we've been doing this for over 50 years. Next year will be our 60th anniversary. During that time, we've grown. We are now 40 staff members. We work throughout Pennsylvania, also in neighboring states. So we have an office in Delaware. We have an office in Pittsburgh. We do work Ohio, West Virginia, New Jersey. But our headquarters is Philadelphia. So I want to, before I go into any detail of how we got here, I do want to talk about where we are today. So there's some things I put up here on this slide, but can anybody talk about their personal experience with air quality? Does anybody want to share any story or any facet from your life about how you've experienced air that's really great or air that's not so great? Yes, please. I think this should work.
Hello? Yeah. I do not have any allergies, but I have found that I really have a lot of problem with my sinuses, more than I ever did. And I just was talking to the girls out there, and they said today is, I think, a yellow day or whatever. I said, it's really not a good air quality for, I said, even if you don't have allergies? She said, yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, so you've had problems with your sinuses, and yes, more than you used to. These things can progress over time, right? It's not always static. It's not that you're born with, a certain type of lung function and you have that for the rest of your life. Over the course of your life, the quality of the air affects our lungs. It affects our heart. It affects all of our systems because it's what we take in. It's what we take in. It's what our body processes. Does anybody else want to share any anecdote, any story?
So, doesn't apply to Delaware County so much, but we used to live in Naples, Italy, and I am holding this close, and it's not working. It is? All right, I faded. All right, so Italy in the mid-'80s had terrible air quality, and our house looked out over the Bay of Naples to the island of Capri sometimes. And actually that was how we told ourselves how good the air quality was, is if we could, one, see the island, see the outline, that was good. Two, see shapes on the island, that was actually pretty good. And maybe once or twice a year, you could actually make out the buildings on the island when the air quality was clean. But by and large, air quality was terrible. Open burning of garbage was common.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yes, and that's a common issue actually. There are a lot of places in the country where you can tell the air quality by a certain landmark. So for example, in Los Angeles, and especially the air is cleaner there today than it was 20 years ago, but in the 90s in Los Angeles, you could tell how clear the air was by whether you could see the mountains, right? Whether you could see the mountains behind the city. And many times people couldn't see the mountains because of the smog. Now we are in a better position today, believe it or not, and I know these don't look good. The state of the air by the American Lung Association, it's not great, but this is remarkably better compared to before the Clean Air Act. So the U.S. Clean Air Act is the most powerful tool for protecting our air quality and for protecting public health that's come out of the Environmental Protection Agency. It has saved many, many, many lives over the years, and it is remarkably cost effective. The amount of money it takes to make sure that we clean up our air compared to the health outcomes, the longer lifespans, the better quality of life that we all experience. It's just remarkably efficient. But I want to talk about, even though the air is much better than it used to be, it is not great. And it is not great here in Delaware County. So if you look here, the American Lung Association every year puts out a State of the Air report. I've pulled out some information here that they graded Delaware County's air as a D. This is, A, B, C, D, E, F. They graded it as a D for the number of high ozone days. And ozone is the type of pollution created predominantly by things like vehicle emissions. So this is, the traffic that we get. What comes out of those tailpipes, it creates ozone at the ground layer. One thing to note, ozone is one of those funny types of pollutants that is really bad to breathe in, but is also really important high up in the atmosphere, right? So The ozone layer you may have heard of, and it protects us all from radiation, but we want the ozone to stay up there. We don't want the ozone down here where we're breathing it. The State of the Air report also gave Delaware County an F for particle pollution. Particle pollution is things like soot. It's things like visible smoke. It's things that you can see sometimes, but not always, because these are many tiny particles, and when you breathe them in, they get deep inside your lungs. And not only that, they are small enough, certain types of particles are small enough to pass the barrier between your lungs and your bloodstream. So they go into your blood, and then they get circulated throughout your body, and it causes problems, right? So particle pollution is the single deadliest type of air pollution. This is what kills the most people. So you really don't want to have high particle pollution. And I also put down here EPA information. So there are standards across the country for what air quality should look like. And Delaware County air quality has, it is in serious non-attainment of the standards, the EPA standards for short-term ozone. For particle pollution, it's in a status called maintenance. That's kind of technical, but what it means is it was not in attainment before, and it's getting better. Now it's in attainment, but they're not sure it's going to stay that way, so they're kind of monitoring it. So, so that's what that means. So I want to do a little more audience participation here too, right? So I have some questions up here. Please feel free to either just shout out, or we can, pass along the mic for your answers. So let's start with this. Where does air pollution fall in terms of health risk factors globally? I'd love people's thoughts on that. Yes, please.
And frankly, when I moved here from New Jersey, and I'm not going to say it's very clean there, I brought 3 HEPA air filters into my apartment because I don't trust the air at all.
Yeah, and air filters can be great. Air filters great for cleaning up indoor air. That is one useful tool for making sure that at least when we're in our dwellings, when we're in our houses, whatever it is, that we're breathing in cleaner air than we could be otherwise. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So in terms of ranking, air pollution falls second in terms of the highest health risk factors. It comes after high blood pressure, that's number 1, but before tobacco. So bad air quality, air pollution is more dangerous than tobacco, not quite as dangerous as high blood pressure. Next up, how many people die every year of air pollution? Any guesses or thoughts from the audience on that?
Obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be here. But and I think it's not evenly distributed around the globe. Like India, around Delhi, has terrible pollution, and so I think it varies from one country to another.
Very true. Very true. It is a lot. It is 8 million people die every year around the globe from air pollution, and it is unevenly distributed, just like you said. So the places where air is dirtier, people have shorter lives, people have poorer health. Where air is cleaner, it's the opposite. And there have been a lot of studies that have shown this over the course of many years. And last, I actually answered earlier, so my bad. But the deadliest type of air pollution is particle pollution. And the number 1 source of particle pollution is burning things. So it comes from lots of different types of burning things. It can be the burning that happens in people's cars. It can be burning at power plants. It could be burning leaves in a backyard. There are many different ways these particles get created, but that's the number one way. So I put this, just a ranking here: high blood pressure, air pollution, tobacco, diet, and then high fasting plasma glucose. So, and here's just another very broad question. And I'll just give you a hint that there's not one answer. But what's the most important thing you can do for the environment? Does anybody have opinions on that they want to share? That's a great one, planting trees. Composting, another great way. Yep, that's right. Not driving a vehicle with an internal combustion engine. Recycling. These are all great. These are all great ways to improve our environment. And, you know, I'll share some of my thoughts, right? So these are all great ways, and I want to name that these are things that we do individually. It is just as important to think about what we can do collectively, right? Because many of the things we do individually, you know, they are very important in our immediate sphere. But how do we individually make sure a power plant is polluting less? How do we individually make sure that our trash isn't getting burnt in an incinerator that's polluting people's neighborhoods? Mostly we have to act collectively, and the most powerful way that we can make change to make the environment better is by acting collectively. It can be by banding together as a community to set up a composting program like at Marist Grove. It can be acting politically to try to get better policies in place. You know, the EPA, it didn't create the Clean Air Act out of nowhere. There was a groundswell of energy and support from people all across the country to make sure that there were policies that were affecting people's lives in a good way, right? Making sure that it could clean up our air. And that doesn't happen unless we work collectively. So the individual actions are all important, but it's also critically important to act collectively to make our environment cleaner. These are some of the ways that we work at Clean Air Council to try to advocate for a better environment, right? Policy, I just mentioned, we need good laws, and they need to be implemented well. Because having good laws, if they're just sitting on the books and they're not actually being implemented, it doesn't go very far. You need both, right? And you also need, it's not just laws, it's also the nitty-gritty regulations, that dirty word. People made it a dirty word, but regulations are where law becomes reality, where statutes become reality, right? So when the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection is making sure that our air is clean, they look at the regulations, you know, and they make sure that those are followed. That's how it works. They don't just look at the statutes like the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act does not tell you everything you need to know. I am a lawyer. I practiced air law for many years. I can tell you the regulations are where it's at. Advocacy. So we need to speak up, right? We have to speak up. If we don't speak up, you know who's speaking? Power plant owners are speaking. Car manufacturers are speaking. Companies that want to pollute rivers, they hire lobbyists. Everybody else is speaking, mostly in places where we're not hearing. But the decision makers are hearing. You know, there's a thing they say in Pennsylvania here that in Harrisburg, there's an oil and gas lobbyist for every legislator in Harrisburg. The number of people that are environmental advocates in Harrisburg, I can count on my hands. That is the difference that we face. And the only way we can change that is by speaking up and speaking up louder. Legal action. Legal action is critical because sometimes people break the law. And you can't just let it stand. If we just let it stand every time, people would be like, oh, well, I guess I can just break the law more because nobody's going to hold me accountable. So we have to sometimes go to court and sue them. We sometimes have to make sure that the laws are being followed and judges are looking at this. And education, right? That's the base of everything. Without education, who's going to act? Because who knows how to act? Who knows what the issues are? You have to get education. You have to make sure that people understand what the issues are and that people are able to do everything else. Everything else flows from education. So I want to talk in particular about, and I won't go, I know I'm already beyond the time that I had planned for this. So I'm having so much fun with you all. Apologies for being slow. I will breeze through some of this. I wanted to talk a little bit about the oil and gas industry in Pennsylvania because it doesn't look from here in Delaware County necessarily like a big thing. But let me tell you, it is a very big thing in Pennsylvania. And if you go down to the Delaware River, you can see that because the industry that you will see there, you'll see refineries, you will see export terminals, you will see lots of pipelines. There's a lot of stuff going on down at the Delaware River in Delaware County. Not as much right here, but also even here, if you look, you can find it. And a lot of that comes from elsewhere in the state. So fracking, which is the modern way of extracting gas from underground, is highly polluting, and it has made, in the last 20 years, it has made Pennsylvania one of the top oil and gas producing states in the country. I think maybe Texas is in front of us and Louisiana is behind us. We are, I think, number 2 in producing gas in the country. And there are a lot of different stages. I'll just run through this real quick. So upstream on this side of the diagram over here is where you get the gas out of the ground. Then you need to transport it. You need to get it where it needs to go, right? And you need to clean it up along the way and store it and things like that. Then downstream is what we see more in Delaware County. It's things like petrochemical manufacturing, refining. And then there's, once you get the products that come from those, they are also transported and stored and sent to different markets. So all of that, the whole thing up and down, all of it happens in Pennsylvania in different places. I'll just breeze through this. Fracking, so thousands of studies have linked fracking with health harms for kids, for families, for workers in the area. Right now we are trying to make sure that Pennsylvania requires fracking wells to be farther from people's homes than they are right now. Because studies have shown that the closer you are to a fracking well, the poorer your health is. Right now, the distance is 500 feet. That is not sufficient. And the studies can be very specific. Recently, a few years ago, the University of Pittsburgh did studies showing that there's worse asthma experienced up to 10 miles away from fracking wells, increased risk of childhood lymphoma, reduced infant birth weight and size. I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is just more issues. This is related to health. The workers who are working in fracking experience not only exposure to air pollution, and you can see some of that happening here just with the dirty air, but also things like radioactivity that have been really underreported. Again, there's a lot going on here. I'm not going to go through all of it. It's also important, going through the different types of advocacy earlier, right? So we are asking, as I mentioned, to get the distance required between houses and fracking wells to be increased from a minimum of 500 feet right now. We are asking the state to make regulations to make sure that's the case. Yes? Yes, so I will make copies of the slideshow available to anyone who wants them. Absolutely. We need in Pennsylvania, we need new rules to make sure that when the gas comes out of the ground, it doesn't leak lots of methane, right? Because right now, at every step of the process of getting oil and gas from the ground to the end uses, methane leaks. And methane is not as well known as carbon dioxide in terms of climate pollution, but it is the number 2 climate pollutant after carbon dioxide. And methane is the chemical that's the predominant component of gas. So the gas that comes out of a stove is predominantly methane. And when some of that leaks, it stays in the atmosphere, and it increases the climate chaos that we are experiencing. Skip through some of this. So this is a slide from the Mariner East 2 pipeline construction. I just want a quick poll. Anybody raise your hand if you've heard of Mariner East 2? Okay. So we have a lot of people who've heard about that. That makes sense because this construction happened very close to where we are standing right now. All across Pennsylvania, from different states, through Chester County, through Delaware County, going on down to the river, right? This is one of the aspects of oil and gas development in Pennsylvania. Pipeline construction can cause spills, like you can see from overhead here. See all that cloudiness in Marsh Creek State Park. That was a result of drilling fluid spill from the Mariner East 2 pipeline construction. Here is Slayton Park, again, not very far from here, under construction, with the pipeline under construction in 2019. You can see just the gigantic area that it takes up to build these things. And this is in Chester County on Lisa Drive in Exton. This is more of the sinkholes that were appearing from improperly building pipelines, and then the drilling fluid falling into the sinkholes and going underground who knows where. This was in a residential neighborhood. That's somebody's house back there. They eventually had to buy out the entire portion of the neighborhood. The company did. And the worst part of pipelines in terms of danger is occasionally they explode. So this is in Beaver County. This is northwest of Pittsburgh. In an area you can see, it's kind of hard to tell from here, but you can see the scale of this. That's a power line going down here. These are all trees. This is a car over here. There's a very large explosion. You know, thank goodness no one was killed, but you know, people live up here, and this does happen occasionally. So I want to take us again downstream now, and I just want to also check time. I want to take us downstream. This is in Delaware County. This is in an area by the river, by the Delaware River. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at Monroe Refinery from Wilcox Park. I actually took this picture, and this is in Trainer. So you can see people's houses, and of course I was taking this picture standing in a park, very close to the refinery operations. And what it's like to live there, of course, is you have increased pollution. You can see some stuff coming out of the smokestack here. But a lot of times, air pollution is not visible. So that's another thing to note, is that you can sometimes tell, okay, something's coming out of here. A lot of that steam, but not all of that steam. There's other stuff in there. And sometimes you just have air pollution coming from, you know, pits where things have been dumped, for example, where you have volatile organic compounds is the term for them. These are chemicals that are, the term volatile indicates that they come up into the air from liquid form, and organic compounds, these are generally things related to oil and gas. So you usually can't see things like that, but it's very important to make sure that communities throughout Delaware County are protected from these major sources of pollution. that are interspersed throughout their neighborhoods. Some of the things that we do at Clean Air Council to try to protect people in these communities, right? So here is just an image from our pollution tracker. So you can go onto our website and find the pollution tracker. We're at cleanair.org. And it shows all sorts of different facilities that pollute and where they are, right? That's the bottom left, what you're looking at here. And then up top, we have a network of monitors, air quality monitors. I actually have one of these in my backyard. So people can host these monitors. You know, you could put monitors here. And they show the air quality at any given time. Right? You can just go on a website. If you look up Purple Air Map, you can find what your air quality is looking like very locally at any given time. So we've been trying to build out some of that, and a lot of these monitors here and here are ones that we installed. And I want to talk also briefly about the Chester incinerator, right? So trash, a lot of trash from Delaware County and from Philadelphia gets sent to this incinerator. And you can see the smokestack up top here. What happens is the trash comes in, it gets burnt, and a lot of what was the trash becomes air pollution instead of ground pollution. So not everything gets burnt up. You know, some people think that if it goes to the incinerator that it's gone then at that point, but that's not how it works, right? Some stuff, it becomes, on the one hand, air pollution in the air. On the other hand, there's remaining ash that is very toxic that usually gets landfilled from that. It is the largest incinerator in the nation, and this is in Chester, right? And it is located in one of the poorest parts of the county and one of the poorest parts in the state. And Delaware County sends 350,000 tons per year of trash to be burned, in addition to what Philadelphia sends and others. Right now in Philadelphia, there's a bill called the Stop Trashing Our Air Act that is to try to prevent Philadelphia from sending its trash to be burnt in incinerators. It is coming up for a vote. It has not been voted on yet. So I've talked a lot of gloom and doom. I wanted to talk a little bit about some positive stuff too. You know, this is a photo I took on a hike in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, as you all know, is an absolutely beautiful state with amazing nature, with wonderful places. And this is just our tiny little corner of the world. There is so much in this world that is beautiful, so much that is natural, so much worth saving, in addition to saving our health and saving the health of our neighbors. So I like including this little quote in presentations from Joan Baez: "Action is the antidote to despair." So I do this work every day. It can be depressing, right? Because I go through stats like 350,000 tons of trash sent to an incinerator in Chester, or 8 million lives lost every year from air pollution. But I have to stay sane, right? And part of the way I stay sane is I am lucky, I am really lucky to have this position at Clean Air Council where I have levers to make a difference in terms of the things I'm working on every day. And the beautiful thing of it all is that no matter what position we're in, no matter where we are in life, we have the power to make some of that change. And that action brings me back from despair. And of course, everybody is going to be, you have your own things that you do to get through life, to feel good, to make sure that you're making a difference. Everybody's different. But I think action is a commonality. We change the world and we say, okay, we can do this. So the future is unwritten, right? We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. All we can do is try to make tomorrow better. That's what we can do. So how hard are we going to do that? How hard are we going to fight for this? I loved hearing earlier from Mickey about the compost program that you're doing here. That is amazing. things like that, right? Acting collectively, acting together to make sure that there are ways that we can all improve, right? That we can all make this world better. That is where it's at. That is where it's at. So thank you. That is all I had prepared. I would love to talk with you, to hear your questions. Yes, please. Great question. So what's the alternative to the Chester incinerator? I will give you the short answer rather than the long answer. So waste is a difficult problem, right? There is no easy answer for waste. You know, we all every day produce waste in our lives. There are many partial answers. Composting is an important partial answer because so much of our waste is organic. And rather than make that a problem, composting makes that a solution. It turns that organic waste that would be sitting in a landfill or that would be burning in an incinerator, and it turns that into soil that generates life. So composting is a piece of it. Reduction in waste. So we can all use less, right? We can all think about when we're buying things, do we need this, do we need that? We can avoid plastics because plastics are a particularly tricky part of waste to deal with. You know, something like a paper bag will turn into something natural much quicker, even in a landfill, than plastic will. And it's much less likely to pollute outside of a landfill. But no matter what we're doing, at least today, we're going to still have waste that needs to go somewhere that we can't just put outside or can't whatever it is. And landfilling is not wonderful, but it's generally better than incinerating. So in addition to these things like making sure there's less waste that goes into the stream and diverting some of that to composting. Also, landfilling is still, again, not great, but it's not the worst. Incineration is pretty much the worst. Yes, please.
You talked about methane earlier on, and you also tried to get us to rank things.
Yes.
So, all right. So as far as ranking methane production, I mean, I'll take the hit for the cows, which everybody blames. I'll let Mary sitting next to me take the hit for wetlands, which also produce methane. But what about landfills? What about fracking? Like, what's the relative importance of these different sources?
Yes, great question. So what's the relative importance of the different types of sources of methane in the environment and methane contributions to the air? The agriculture is a very big one, right? So that's there, and as long as we're eating, there's going to be some level of that. And if there were nothing else, I would certainly be sleeping better at night. The oil and gas industry is probably not as big as agriculture, but I might be getting this wrong, but it's certainly up there. It might be number 2, right? So, and one of the big issues with that is that when the companies that are doing this fracking or doing this refining, when they tally up their numbers, they all look like they're emitting less methane than we know they're emitting, because we see from the atmosphere there's a lot more methane than we expect if we just look at the numbers they're using, which means that they're not giving us full information about how much they're leaking. So there are a lot of leaks, and there's a lot of just methane dissipating from the oil and gas industry. So yeah, and wetlands, they're an important source, but they're a natural source, and wetlands existed and were emitting methane for millions of years without it being a problem. So I kind of set that aside, even though it's not insignificant. Yeah, good question. Yes, please.
In Europe, they have incinerators, but they have much stricter laws on what can be burnt or what can be emitted. What are the hopes in the United States of ever getting pollution laws that incineration seems like it's a better answer than landfill, but not today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is difficult. It is difficult to get better laws and tighter controls for U.S. incinerators. And I'll specifically call out Pennsylvania, right? So if there's a database that anybody can go onto online, it's called the US EPA ECHO database, ECHO. And that database will show you what big polluting facilities are violating their permits every quarter for the last several quarters. And just explore it. If you have a chance, just explore it. They're violating their permits all the time. All the time. I was looking at the U.S. Steel Clairton facility south of Pittsburgh on ECHO maybe 2 days ago. Every quarter of the last 12 quarters, EPA registered a significant violation of the Clean Air Act. Not just any violation, there are different grades. Every quarter were significant violations of the Clean Air Act. So why does that happen? Why does Pennsylvania allow that to happen? I don't have a great answer, except that there's a lot of pressure on our regulators to not require the law to be enforced very well. And when they do try to enforce the law, they get sued. And then they don't have enough money to defend those lawsuits. So there are big structural problems in the US that are preventing facilities from being cleaner, largely because they're not even complying with the permits they have, and because the permits they have are not strong enough. And how do you fix that? We've been trying to do it for a long time. We make some progress, but so much more is needed than we can do. You know, we're small, right? We do not have the resources of the state government, of the federal government. We do not have the resources of US Steel. We do not have the resources of any of these big facilities. So we're trying to get more powerful, and all of us need to get more powerful to push back on that.
Alex, what do you think of the trash to steam plants? I believe there's one in Chester.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's another term for an incinerator. So they're the same thing, they just go by different names. Yeah, so very dirty facility. And yeah, this one in particular in Chester is the largest, most polluting in the nation. They do, that's true. Yeah, they are power plants too. They don't just burn the thing, they are power plants.
You talked about there's an attempt to have Philadelphia say that their trash is not going to be sent to the incinerator.
Yes.
How hopeful are you about that? What's going on about that?
You know, that's a great question. So what's going on about the Stop Trashing Our Air Act in Philadelphia? How likely is that to get passed? We have a real shot, I'll say that. I think there's a real strong chance that with enough public pressure, Philadelphia City Council will pass that law, but it's not a guarantee by any means. If I had to give it odds, maybe 50-50. It's really on the fence. Yeah, so the trash would go to landfills in the region. Yeah, and there are other companies that are offering those services, and many municipalities primarily do that or exclusively do that anyway. Which again is not a perfect solution. There are unfortunately no perfect solutions here. Yes, please.
I was going to ask you, is there a particular state in the United States that... Alex, is there a particular state in the United States that does a good job or a better job than we do? And is there another country that we could follow some of the things that they do? It may not be the same environment, et cetera, but are there people that we can look to as doing a better job than we do?
Absolutely, yeah. There are most states that neighbor us do a better job than we do in Pennsylvania. So New York, much better job. New Jersey, remarkably, much better job. Delaware, much better job. I don't look at Maryland much, but if I had to guess, better job. West Virginia and Ohio, yeah, we probably do better than they do. But there are absolutely better practices elsewhere, and a lot of it comes down to the political will to make it happen.
Following through. with the
Yes.
regulations and enforcement.
Exactly. Yes, please.
I just wanted to ask, the EPA has kind of basically been neutered, correct? So how does that influence Pennsylvania and the other states? Because, or does it?
Yeah, no, great question. You know, I could talk with you for 6 hours about that. I'll give you the short version. So EPA is a lot, yeah, it's doing a lot of bad things, active bad things. It's also still doing a lot of good things in the background, but not as much and not as effectively, and often that's undercut. There are many, many people at EPA who are wonderful people who are trying their best to stick it out and defend everybody and really do a good job, but they're having a hard time. I know a number of them, several have quit because they've been pushed out or because it's just too difficult to work in anymore. And that affects things greatly. I mean, there are many changes that trickle down from the top. So just a very quick example. The other day, within the last few months, EPA rescinded what's called the endangerment finding, which is the underpinnings for U.S. climate policy. So EPA pulled the rug out of U.S. climate policy. We are in a lawsuit against EPA right now, challenging that because it's illegal. And, you know, so that affects things in many different ways. EPA is also often the agency that if the state agencies that protect people aren't doing their job properly, EPA will come in and make sure that they're doing their job better, or at least try to. And of course, that is looking completely different right now. So we are a lot more dependent on state and local protections than we used to be. Other thoughts or questions?
Alex, I'd like to ask you something.
Please.
Going back to the stacks and the pollution coming out of them, I asked a question of the waste management people. Waste management are the people that take our trash, about pollution coming out of the Chester incinerator. And their answer was like, well, you know, why are you asking that question? It's scrubbed. So can you speak a little bit about scrubbing and what the
Absolutely.
possibilities are?
Yeah, and yeah, this is an area I know a good deal on. There in those stacks, this is how we're better than we were before the Clean Air Act, right? This was all worse before the Clean Air Act. So and I'll go to the incinerator. Whoops. See, I'm doing this backwards is the problem. Okay, so in that stack up there, or connected with that stack, there are filters and things like that. So there's a technology called bag houses, right? It captures bag houses are places that hold big filter bags, essentially, and they capture a lot of air pollution. There are other technologies used, for example, selective catalytic reduction, which is a fancy term, but it reduces nitrogen oxide pollution in the air. There are technologies used at most of these facilities that do a lot to make sure that the pollution coming out is a lot better than it would be if it were just like a chimney and there's nothing in there to protect you, right? Nonetheless, even after doing all that, it's still dangerous, right? It's still dangerous, and that's the problem, is that they reduce pollution some. They don't reduce it all.
But is it possible to reduce it all the way?
Not realistically, no. But you can do better than what they're doing. So that's there. It really is all on a spectrum, right? There's better technology with better controls. There's worse technology with worse controls. You know, this is not the worst technology being used, but it could be used better, and they could enforce the law to make sure that they're actually using the best technology. And that is a key piece that is missing from a lot of this.
I just want to say one more thing.
Please.
Because it is Earth Month and we are focusing on this. I think a really important solution is to use less stuff.
Absolutely.
So that we play a role when we're creating this stuff. We play a role very personally in the pollution that's created.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah. A lot of this, not all of this, but a lot of the stuff that goes there is ultimately from households and from businesses and from other sources. So one thing that all of us can do, no matter what else happens, is, take control of our own contributions to this. Yes, please. Oh, he's got one for you.
We have been working on a project here at Maris Grove of cutting cardboard, or paperboard really, to make collage material for children at a Widener program in Chester. And on May 1st, we're going to pack up the cardboard pieces, put them in the proper colors, and get it ready to go. And at that activity, the mayor of Chester is going to talk to us. He's coming here to Maris Grove to talk about the burner, and we'll see what he has to say about it. So it's May 1st. Sorry, got to look at May. It's from 2 to 3, and it's in the
Redwood Theater.
Redwood Theater, right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. And I know we're running up on time, so before we close out, just a couple more quick things. So I'll go back to the very last slide. So, I have my contact information up here, and I'm happy to talk to folks anytime. So, this has my number, and we can make sure to get anybody who wants it, my contact information. You can also go to our website, cleanair.org. It's really easy to remember, cleanair.org. You can sign up for our listservs. You can become a member. Listserv, just email lists. We send out emails all the time, and our emails have ways to take action to protect our environment. Because that's a lot of what we do, is communicate with members and make sure that people have easy ways to just do a couple clicks, send a message to your legislator, send a message to the president, whoever it is, to try to make action happen. So I encourage you to do that. And thank you all so much again for taking the time to attend this today. And really to Maris Grove and Mickey and everybody else for setting this up in the first instance. Thank you so much.